What about, yeah,
So that clock is over 3 minutes fast, just saying.
Travis won't let us stand on the rolly chairs to fix it. Probably wise.
Seems like you need to give that guy a raise.
Not safe. Okay, Scott, we're ready.
Already done.
Good evening and welcome to the December 16th Town of Essex Selectboard meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you have not signed in, please do so. The sign-in sheet is on the table by the door.
Turn off cell phones.
And if you haven't already, please turn off your cell phones or set them to vibrate. Thank you. First item on the agenda are additions and changes. Evan or Greg, do you have anything for us?
None tonight.
Whoa. Andy.
I'd like to pull out the minutes from the November 26th joint meeting
Got it.
for a change.
Mm.
I'd like to.
So we'll make those item 5H. The minutes from November 26th. And I would just like to note that we have on items 5F and G, we have two executive sessions. So as our practice is, usually we will wait until the end of the meeting to go into executive session. Any other changes to the agenda? All right, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved?
And a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the agenda as amended, please say aye.
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 Okay. Now we are going to go to public to be heard. This is the part of the meeting when members of the audience can speak to the board on items that are not on the agenda. So if you do have something to say, please feel free to stand up, state your name, and share your thoughts.
Alan and having spent quite a bit of time sitting where you're sitting, and having gone through a couple of iterations of merger separation talks, I've been sitting back watching everything that's been going on as much as I can, and thought I would just stop by and give you my feelings on what you've been up to. And the first is, I would like to commend you on the communications that you got out there on an ongoing basis with respect to, what's going on and what you're thinking of and that kind of thing. However, I do want to warn you about being very careful with respect to the results of the survey. And I think I've seen some things on that, but the people that usually fill out surveys are ones that kind of like the way the survey is written or going, but if it's not, you can't get your answers the way you want them, you don't fill out the survey and you don't send it in. So I just caution you with that, because I've been down that road before. My concerns with respect to specifics is, and it never really has been done before because everybody was trying to be careful, but the staffing changes that have already occurred and potential staffing changes that will occur if there is a merger, I really think you have to publicize that, because that's a savings in tax dollars for the people that are voting. And my belief is that this is really about the money, and they got to see that. Anticipated operational savings. If there's going to be savings in buildings, or going to be savings in equipment that you don't have to purchase because we're combining fire departments or those kinds of things, need to publicize those kinds of things. And I know that it becomes very sensitive because it's like with the personnel thing, you don't wanna say you're gonna cut 4 people from the highway departments, because then the 4 people in the highway department wonder who the heck they're gonna be, or, but the taxpayers need to know and feel that they understand where possible savings are gonna be if they're gonna vote yes for it. But those things are what's gonna help to offset the tax increases that one portion of the group is gonna be looking at. Representation. Given a lot of thought to this over 20 years since we've been talking about it. And I grew up in Burlington, and I watched Burlington politics a lot. I moved out of Burlington as soon as I graduated from UVM and moved to Essex, because politics were changing in Burlington at that time. But wards or separate districts are not good for local government, because it causes folks to focus on their little piece of the pie, and they aren't looking at the town as a whole. I know initially that's going to be a hard item to sell, and I ask you to maybe look at that kind of division representation to start with, but that it sunset in the end. There's a period down the road of 5 years or something that it's going to sunset, and then everybody represents the entire community, because I want my sidewalks done, and that goes at the expense of not getting the park over and in my neighborhood done, and that just creates really big issues in the community, and happens in Burlington if you watch those meetings all the time. Another one is with respect to operations. Another one I've given a lot of thought to, but I really think that you need to look at, and I don't think anybody has yet, the potential for 2 water sewer districts. The utilities in the village are a lot older than the vast majority of the utilities in the town. And people that I have talked to, understand that or whatever, and there's got to be rehab of facilities, and the people that just moved into a new house up in off Route 15 or something really don't want to pay for the reconstruction of the sewer going down Park Street or something that needs to be done because it's 100 years old and infiltration is excessive or something along those lines. So something to look at. It is really going to be a challenge because, as we saw previously, you can have 6 or 8 issues, and all 6 or 8 issues don't have to be a reason that I vote no or vote yes on a community-wide vote. If I don't like the name, but I like everything else, I'm going to vote against it. If I don't think you're treating me fairly with respect to utilities, and I'm going to be paying, I'm going to vote against it. So I just, caution you to look at those things in detail, in depth, and get that information out to everybody. And you've got a challenge. As recent as last night, there was somebody at my house looking for us to sign a petition for something. I didn't pay attention to it because I hollered up from downstairs and said that I'll put my name where the vote is sometime down the road. But there's something organized out there, I guess, and I don't know exactly what it is, but it's going to have to be a sales pitch that you do. So that's all I got to say, I guess, on that.
Alan, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Can you remind us how long your term was on the select board?
18 years.
And exactly when was that?
Long time ago.
You went, so we attempted to merge in 2006 and then in 1999.
Yeah,
Were
I
you
was on for both of those. Yeah,
That's a long time.
yeah,
So you've got some pretty good firsthand experience.
yeah. The reason I believe I lost the election when I ran was, and I hear that you might be starting to go down that road again, was the 1% sales tax.
Were you in favor or against?
I was in favor.
And when was that? 2003?
Oh,
No,
It
because
was-
he was on in 2007.
yeah, it was after that.
After that, okay.
Yeah.
2009.
But, yeah, So, but it, yeah, it was and I was chair at that point in time, so.
Yeah. We'll have to have you in for that one too.
Yeah, okay, very good, well, thank you very much.
Does anyone have questions for Alan or? Okay.
Thank you for 18 years of service.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else for public to be heard? Items that are not on the agenda? Okay, we will wrap that part up and move on to business items. Our first item is a first-class liquor license approval for Sean Trepanier and Mark Barbecue doing business as Heart and Soul. I understand Sean and Daryl are here, right? We're just, feel free to come up. So we have a liquor license approval request here. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the application before us? Max?
Yeah, on, I don't know what page it is, maybe it's 2. The liquor November expired.
Yeah, for the training for the
Yeah, for the liquor control license education seminar training.
I took that last week, so I recertified last week for that.
Okay, did you get the certificate to the office?
I believe I did.
Okay,
Yeah.
Greg, you have it?
I'll check on it, and if as long as you condition it on the liquor license or the certification being submitted, we'll find it and track it down.
Sounds like
Yep.
they did it last week, so.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, that's the only thing I had.
Okay. And this is just, are you asking for an outdoor consumption permit as well, or no? Just
Well, as at this moment, no.
Not at the
I mean, down the road when the weather gets nice, we'll have to apply for the outside consumption, but this is just for the restaurant for right now.
And any other questions for the folks from Mark Barbecue? Sounds okay. Do you have any questions for us?
No. Well, yeah, actually, for the outside consumption, does that go through the town and then the state, or does it have to just go strictly through the town, like the liquor license process does? You have to go through the town and then the state.
Same process, right?
It's the same process as this liquor license. So
So-
it starts with the select board, they sign off on it, then it goes to the state for final approval.
Is it a different application or the same?
There's an extra sheet, I think you
Okay.
can check on here.
That I would get that through the town.
Yes.
Okay.
You should leave some time for
Yes.
it to go through the process.
Yeah.
So don't come in May
No.
if you want to open up in May.
Who knows when our spring will be? So yeah,
Oh,
I'll get
yeah.
on it.
Good point.
Any other questions or comments on this application? Andy?
It's not on the application, but I hear you guys have been doing some good stuff for the community and making donations.
Yeah, we tried it. I mean, the whole idea behind Mark Barbecue is, I tell people the name Mark is after my father-in-law, who was a super great guy and gave to everybody when he could. And Mark Barbecue is about leaving our mark on the community as well as what we do with our food and everything else. So we do a Mission Sunday once a month where all the profits that we make from that day we put towards a charity or an organization. And last month it happened to be Aunt Dot's place, and we had a little over $3,000 to spend on that, which was like 940 pounds of food we ended up buying. And then this last one in December was a little scarce. We didn't quite have the turnout that we were hoping, maybe because it just happened to fall right after the Thanksgiving holiday. But I ponied up the difference, and we've got like 3,500 to go shopping for toys tomorrow for Toys for Kids. So
Wow.
we're gonna keep that going. We've got something booked for every month straight through for the next 5 months that I know of. So, and that's something that we're gonna continue to do with both restaurants. I just haven't figured out with Heart and Soul how that's going to work yet, but with Mark Barbecue, it's one Sunday a month. Come in and get some great barbecue and know that your dollars are going towards something good. So,
Fantastic.
That's outstanding. That's a great example to set for other businesses in the community as well. Thank you.
we're hoping we can inspire others to give. I mean, to be part of your community, you have to be active in your community, and you have to do something to give back to your community. So, those people support us on a day-to-day basis by coming out to eat. The least we can do is try to support some great causes around it. So.
Thank you. So, any other questions, Andy?
Yeah, do you want a particular cycle for your Mission Sundays? This is the first time hearing of it.
So, it's a little tough because I have two small kids, and we are still beat up from the summer in a good way. So it seems to fall right around the first Sunday of the month, but it's not always that Sunday. I know we have the next couple ones all picked out, and they're posted on our Facebook page, so you can see them there. But yeah, you can follow on that and know exactly when we're doing it. It's 12 to 4, and like I said, whatever we bring in profit-wise goes right out the door to something. So.
That's awesome. Want to make a motion, Andy?
Yep. I move that the select board approve the first-class liquor license for Sean Trepanier Mark Barbecue, doing business as Heart and Soul.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. So I just want to read aloud to you a statement that we read aloud to all applicants who get a new liquor license. The Select Board takes the issuance of liquor licenses very seriously, as should the area establishments who serve alcohol. We expect you not to serve alcohol to minors, nor anyone who is obviously inebriated. Thank you for doing business in Essex, and we wish you a very successful year. So, thanks very much, and thank you for what you're doing for our community.
Thank you. Is there anything
Right.
else you want to talk about?
Your brisket is amazing. Like, I'm a bigger fan than I should be because
Nothing wrong with that.
yeah, well, right. I'm gonna be singing a different tune come March when I've got 20 pounds to lose, but
Feel warm in the winter.
yeah, exactly.
Is there anything else you'd like to share about your business since you're new to town? You'd like to share anything else about, you have a Facebook page, you said?
We do, yeah. We
Yeah.
got a Facebook page for both of the Heart and Soul restaurant and Mark Barbecue. They are both in the same building, conveniently.
Oh, okay.
But
they're two different
They are
restaurants.
two different, yeah. Mark Barbecue is strictly Texas style barbecue.
Okay.
So it's as traditional to Texas as you can get. Matter of fact, when you come through the door, you feel like you've
Can smell
walked
it,
into
huh?
Texas, and that's the whole idea. So that one's that, and then Heart and Soul is chef-inspired comfort food. So the whole idea there is we just take things that we've, loved from our past. It's something as simple as pot roast, put a little chef spin on it. Our menu is pretty across the board. From lunch, we've got amazing fresh ground brisket burgers and a chicken fried pork belly BLT sandwich, right down to bronze cod crab cakes and Monaco steaks for dinner. So. All
We'll
prices
be there.
Eat yet today, so this is rough.
Are you open in the evening?
Our hours right now for the winter are Thursday through Saturday. The barbecue is 11 to 8 or sold out, which was 6:30 seemed to be the day time frame this week. And then the Heart and Soul is open 11:30 to 9. And we've got a chef's tasting menu coming out for New Year's Eve. I mean, we're going to do a lot of those. I think that's how I try to team up as like a little fun throwdown between us and another chef where we each prepare a course, but nobody. But all the money from that particular like dinner that night, which will be 2 seatings and a set price, will go towards a charity or something. And so I think that's how Heart and Soul will find its way to give something back to the community as well. Like I said, the words keep echoing in my head. To be part of a community, you have to be active in a community, and we're lucky enough that we got a great staff that works with us. As a matter of fact, like we've got almost everybody going with us tomorrow to go shopping. Yeah. We're calling it Operation Reindeer. So we got walkie-talkies and all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah.
It's gonna be
That's fantastic.
a little obsessive, my wife says, but it's gonna be fun. But yeah,
It's all on your mailing list, so we
But-
know when the chef specials are.
Absolutely. Well, we post them on Facebook every day. So,
Excellent.
I mean, the one thing we probably do a little too much is make you hungry constantly with our photos.
Yeah.
I agree.
But but obviously my marketing campaign works. So stick with it.
Yeah.
No, we would just invite you all in and invite the community to come in and kind of see what we're doing. And, our prices, when we sat down to figure out the menu prices, obviously we have to make money. That's kind of what you got to do in a business. But it's also, we priced it to fit, what surrounds us and the people that have what they have for money to spend. Disposable income doesn't come easy, and when you have it, you want to get a good value for it.
Right.
And you want to be able to go out and feed your family with it and not be able to only feed 2 of you. So our prices, I think, are fairly priced for that and meant for the community to come out and be able to come and partake. I mean, maybe you just want a burger, or maybe you want to spend a little extra and get a Delmonico steak, but we have something that kind of meets everybody's. And we'll change the menu up a little bit as we go along, because one of the goals with Heart and Soul is to really inspire comfort food. To me, isn't just comfort food from America, it's from around the world. I had 15 half plus years in the military, and I enjoyed traveling and trying food all over the globe. So bring some of those things in, let people try some new stuff, but not do it so foreignly that it's scary. So we hope to just kind of bring that little consistently good food to a developing area and allow people to enjoy it with their friends and family.
Well, we wish you the very best, and thank you very much for telling us about it, and we'll all be there soon.
We'll open Thursday. Come on in.
Excellent. All right.
My last question is, did you get a chance to find that? The certificate?
I'll check with the clerk tomorrow.
Okay. If you can't find it, I can get you a copy ASAP tomorrow morning, if it came up missing or whatever, but it should have been there.
If we don't have it, we'll be in touch.
Okay. Excellent.
Thank you.
No, thank
and
you.
Good luck.
Appreciate it.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, guys.
All right. So the next item of business is another application, but Greg, would you walk us through?
Sure.
This is
So
a little different.
the Valley Vape Shop that had been in recently. They opened a new business called the Food Bar. It had been approved first and third class liquor license by the Select Board. Once it got to the State Department of Liquor Control, we found out, or the applicant business owner found out that the Valley Vape, since that name was already in use, they wanted a different name, so they are proposing M&M Management LLC. Department of Liquor Control just wanted authorization from the town to say it was okay, so that's why it's before you. It was pretty much a consent agenda item thing, but since we had a liquor license already on there, I figured I would just tack it onto that. So it's just, the motion will suffice, and we'll be in touch with DLC tomorrow.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
Board approve the name change on an approved liquor license application.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving right along. Item 5B, consider funding request for Gather at the Table community event. I understand we have a handful of folks here for that purpose. Mike's at the table, please join us. Whoever's speaking should be at the
I'm the talker.
If you wouldn't mind giving us all your names, and then let us hear what you're proposing.
Sure. So, I'm Bridget Meyer, and I'm going to segue on Mark's Barbecue and say that live in a community, should be active in the community. We are here as the Gather at the Table team. We're proposing a dinner on January 11th for the whole community, and I will read you our proposal for the camera. Gather at the Table will celebrate people coming together to just be and enjoy great food and entertainment. The event, taking place January 11th at EWSD High School, will include dinner prepared by the EWSD Child Nutrition Service and volunteers, an open gym with supervised activities for children of all ages, local entertainment, and much more. The evening is intended to gather our neighbors, to connect the non-school and school communities, and to enjoy schools, local community organizations, as well as volunteers from the schools, organizations, and community. We hope to have 500 people at this dinner. It's a lofty goal, but we think we can do it. And Liz, this is, well, she can introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Liz Subin.
Scott Fay.
And Aaron Knox and Lori Houghton are also on the team that's planning this. If you have questions for us, that's great. We're asking for your financial support, and we're also asking for your presence at this dinner. It has no agenda. We're going to open at 4:30, have an open gym with lots of children's activities. Games set up in the lobby of the high school for people who are card games for people who are there with their children. Dinner will be 5:30 to 7. And gym will stay open till 8. Questions? Come on.
Bridget, what was the genesis of this? Why did you decide to come together and propose this?
I think Scott and Lori and I do a little bit of collaboration around the summer meal program that's provided at Maple Street Park. And if my memory serves, we were back and forthing about that, talking about the diversity of the community and how many children in particular took part in that program this summer. And Scott can probably fill me in right off the top of his head, but lots.
We served about 30,000 meals to our 18 and under group at the park this summer. was a really big summer. We were kind of debriefing afterwards and thought it'd be good.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I said, let's do a community dinner, and Scott has someone on staff.
Wow.
We're trying for an annual event. For me, I just think it's going to be a great fun way for people to get together in a relaxed fashion, just talking to one another and meeting one another. A lot of us don't know each other, and because we have a unified school district, Westford's included as well, and they've given us funds as well as the village, and we have funding from 2 sources in Westford, and Heart and Soul has given us some money, and I'm missing some things, I think, Mansfield Place.
And
Then the school district was the first to jump on right away, said, yes, absolutely, we need to do this, so.
Yeah, from the historical perspective, Heart and Soul, not the restaurant, but
No.
but the community engagement initiative that started in 2012. One of the outcomes of that was a real effort to try to improve school and community relations and try to figure out what we have right there, an asset, and 45% of the teachers in that school are from this community, and we have a lot of work to do to improve those relations. And so that was something that was identified years ago, and since then another group called Voices for Edu within the school what matters most and shaped a vision. And one of the things that came out of that process also was this understanding that the community and the school should not be disconnected, and we should be all a great entity that we could be. And this event came as just a really great way to celebrate both of those things, the school community and the community itself, and how we can connect and know each other better and build those relationships for moving forward.
So is this a one-time event, or you said Milton does it every month? And
Imagine.
are you looking to do it more than once a year, and if so, are you looking for
One
the
of the
same level of
reasons,
funding?
yeah, good question. One of the reasons that we are asking you for your support, for your financial support, is that we'd like to leave a little seed money in this account so that next year it can take off with hopefully a whole new group of organizers. We always hope that, don't we? And become an annual event. Although when you know, there are lots of things we could do as a community, right? There are lots of ways we could meet. There are lots of things we could do. We could have a bingo night. We could do any number of things. So I think what we're trying to talk about or starting is an ongoing effort to do community get-togethers that are relaxed, without agendas. And I think that we haven't talked beyond this. This is a big effort, and we have not talked beyond this particular, but we are calling it an annual dinner. So I think what we're saying is, yeah, let's do it again.
But not monthly.
Not monthly, no.
Not monthly. And I will say that for Voices for Education and through the EWSD, we have committed funds and have switched to a role of supporting initiatives in the community that are aligned with what we set out to do, which you can find at the EWSD website without getting into the details of that organization. But we have some committed funds to do things that do exactly what Bridget is just talking about. So it will be an annual, if it goes the way I hope, it will be an annual ask for support of this kind. But it will grow, and it will include more and more people for years.
So this is part of this money is seed money to help.
A little bit, yeah. We'll need a substantial amount to do this, but I think we hope to leave money in the account to keep this going, keep it going, build it and keep it going.
Sounds like a neat event, a great idea. My other question is, you're also looking for assistance with promoting the event.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's from the municipality. You're looking for assistance from the staff then to help you with this, or what are you actually asking for?
That, if the staff would like to help, they're more than welcome to. I think we're looking for volunteers, right? I mean, we have a web page and a Facebook page, and we're looking for volunteers and help.
I can maybe answer that. Recently, I have joined this committee, so full disclosure, I am also on there, because I created the website and the Facebook page and the Facebook event. And so I don't know that we would need Do you think, I think.
No,
I
no
think
staff assistant.
putting it on the website and,
Yeah, and because we are part of the Voices for Education group is funding it, we get the assistance of Ben Dickey, who does an amazing job with the district with communication and outreach, and we're partnered with them with the gift that the EWSD gave to this event also comes with that. So we don't need, like, if you think about what happened with Heart and Soul and how much of your staff time had to be dedicated to that work and community engagement processes, that's not what we're asking. What we're asking is for engagement, for you to be interested and engaged and tell people you meet and come and, yes, volunteer for a shift.
Bring your
There's
friends.
a sign-up genius that
Yeah.
Aaron Knox and Cynthia have been working on. And there's plenty of places to just come and help. And that's the kind of support we're looking for, not,
Also promoted on
and yeah, on your own.
Facebook, Downtown
Right,
Essex
through
Junction, all that
your
kind of
town
stuff.
pages and your websites and through your own personal accounts. That's really
Yeah,
what we're asking
yeah.
for.
We're not asking for staff support for this. no.
Definitely
No.
not, but just hopefully a little desire to be part of something that's going to
Yeah.
be really cool.
Thank you for that.
Pat, did you have your hand up?
Yes. Two questions. Do you see this as replacing the annual like international potluck or are you going to continue the?
No, I actually
Wow.
thought maybe we could, I don't know, we'll figure out a way to make this a collaboration maybe even, I mean, at that point, we'll have we'll have people connected to this and we can connect to them and I'm hoping that they connect to us too as well. Yeah, no, not at all.
And that event is being run, it was started also by Voices for Education, but it
Why I
has been taken over by the Diversity Club at the high school, and which is great. And the desire from the beginning for the Voices work was that other people and organizations would take and run with it, which they have for the last 2 years. And the role that we've taken is just supportive. So they do all the work, which is fantastic. That group has been invited to this event as well and are doing their own outreach to get people from their circles to come to the event too. That's the kind of ask we're asking of from that group, but definitely not replacing it. And a potluck is we want to offer free dinner. It's a very different event, and definitely the multicultural potluck is intended to be an annual event still, not replacing it.
And second, have you given thought or consideration to transport for people who live further outside the village? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
This is Annie's.
I have so many exciting ideas that I drove Bridget crazy with.
Yeah, you did.
I mean, I don't need to know obviously the logistical details. But
I don't-
obviously, when an
we're
event
not-
is in one place, we want to try to bring a whole community together. Getting
that the
people
seniors,
get
aren't they
rides.
transported by bus to like the village meeting and town meeting and all of the municipal events? And I don't know how the bus works, so we're gonna have to look into that. But if it's seniors you're concerned about, they really come to these things en masse. So it's not that I'm not worried, it is that we'll look into transport.
The senior bus does run for annual meetings. They also need a heads up. It's
Sure.
not their
No.
normal schedule, so.
Yeah. No, I know, yeah, so
Setting up ahead of time.
we'll investigate. Yeah.
That'd be great. Yeah, I love to see it. Open to as many people who could come.
yeah.
Even if they're
Yeah, yeah,
obviously without
yeah.
transport.
So we ask for your help in dissemination of this information as well. You all have friends and contacts in neighborhoods, and we want a lot of people there. So help us.
Just for clarification, the senior van normally works during the daytime. If the select board is of a mind, we could look into providing that service that evening. Sure. That could be part of your giving, if you are of a mind to do that. We would have to schedule it, and luckily, we have a month. We are
Barely.
early, but it is a scheduling thing with drivers. A lot of our drivers also don't really enjoy driving at night.
Yeah.
It's part of their of that age as well, that they don't, but usually we'll be able to find someone.
Okay, that's
Great, thank you.
You mentioned you have a number of sponsors. Your memo doesn't talk about what your entire budget looks like, so I'm just trying to get a feel for how much.
We think we're relying on Scott to tell us what this meal is going to cost if 500 people show up. And he says it will cost $3,000, correct? We'll have incidentals. We've already purchased banners. We've done things like that, so there will be incidentals. But for the meal itself, it's going to cost $3,000.
Okay, so you're asking the town and the village each to put in 1,500, so
Yes.
that's the 3,000. But
Yes.
You also said you had other
We do.
sponsors. So
We do,
I'm just
and
trying
we
to
had,
get a feel for
sure,
the
we
entire
have,
budget,
we got
not just the meal.
$500, we've received 500 from
Heart and Soul.
Heart and Soul. We've received $1,500
$1,500
from Voices for Education. The town of Westford gave us $100, and the Westford Children and Families Committee gave us $150. And Mansfield Place gave us $100 because one of the team members works there. What am I missing? Well, you said the village. Yeah, the village gave us $1,500. I'm sorry, I thought you said
And
that.
so for an overall budget, as you heard, part of it is for saving, to have moving forward. So the cost of the dinner we've already covered in terms of if with your contribution.
Yes.
We're good with that, and we can have that seed money for the annual event that we're hoping to have moving forward. We, as Bridget likes to say, we're going to be doing it regardless,
Yep.
and your support would really mean a lot for that. And we are really excited about the excitement that we feel from people we've talked to in the community about doing something fun and without an agenda and without a facilitator in the room. It'll be just a celebration, which is really well needed and exciting.
And I just did an interview with the Essex Reporter this evening, and he said to me, Mike, his name is, he said to me, well, what will you do if 1,000 people come? So there you go. That's Scott. Look at Scott.
I'll be like this.
Yeah.
I'll be sweating.
We'll be in the background like, oh.
We'll go to Costco is closed.
I know,
so
I know.
that's good.
Well, we got the kitchen.
We'll be turning tables.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be turning tables.
Tables, absolutely, yeah.
Nice answer. That's great.
I'm assuming this will be in the cafeteria.
That's right.
It holds 500 people?
It will.
Or-
It'll be more of a, think of it as a busy restaurant. We're hoping that there'll be flow moving in and out, and the auditorium, the black box theater is a possibility, and
Yeah.
the gym will have the kids, and so we're hoping to transform it for the night into something that doesn't feel like the academic environment it feels like right now. And yes, in terms of seating that many people at one time, we're not going to try to do that, but we have plenty of seats, and everybody is welcome. And if we have 1,000 people, that's a great problem to have, and everyone's welcome.
And everyone will be fed.
Yes.
Annie?
Henry and Nathan Wu will be playing music that evening so far. And now I'm excited about the Black Box Theater. So
There's
now I
a
need
lot
to
of
talk to
exciting
Liz.
things that we can do about that, and a lot of students are getting involved too, which to me is really exciting because that's where my part is, working with the youth who are getting excited about doing this. So it's all good.
All right.
Oh, I'm more excited.
Any further questions or comments for
Good.
on the dinner? What is the board's pleasure?
I would move that the select board donate $1,500 to the Gather at the Table community event. And what do we need to say about the senior bus to see if we can have that available for that event as well? Okay. Included, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Included as part of the 1,500 or included as, in addition, the cost of the bus?
Well, I think they need in addition.
In addition to the
Yeah.
$1,500. I
Right.
think that's a clarification we
Yes.
should have in the resolution.
So 1,500 and the bus.
Plus seniors. Annie?
I just want to make sure that it's okay if I'm voting or if I need to be recused.
Okay, let's get the second on the table and then we'll talk about that. Does anybody want to second that motion?
Second motion.
Now, Annie, you had said that you're involved in the organization. Do you want to talk to us about whether you want to recuse yourself?
I don't feel that, I think it's two different things, but it's up to, I feel grateful for any decision from those around me.
Andy?
I don't think she gets any personal gain from it, so.
You're not getting a cut of the money, right?
No, I will not be getting any cut of any money in any way, shape,
Then
or
I'm
form.
okay.
No,
if you
it's
vote.
not.
I appreciate your bringing that up so that we're well aware. But no, I don't think it's necessary. But in the future, if anyone does need to recuse themselves, we need to have that conversation first before the conversation happens, because our policy is to leave the room if you are,
I tried, I didn't find a moment.
gotta get that hand up faster.
Live and learn, that's what we're all
Anyway,
doing.
there is a motion and a second.
Yeah,
Andy?
just one question, I guess clarification on the senior bus, or we're not, are we, that has to be contingent on the ability to get drivers, right? So there's no,
So, yes,
That's
so
what
what
I
I
mean.
would suggest is we will attempt to get drivers and that van, whatever cost that is for that night, we will charge to the select board, not to, recreation,
Yep.
et cetera.
Perfect.
do we have the funds to pay for this in our budget?
Now you ask.
Well, we haven't voted on it.
We haven't voted.
Well, does
I think
does
there's
the
some
does
un-
the van
some
require
unbalance we could
a
probably tap
specific
into.
class license, or can anyone drive it?
It requires a town employee to drive it, and yes, they do have, they've had training. So the answer to your first question, which is, do you have the funding? Our best guess of where to put this, because it was not budgeted, is in the select board's budget. You would probably go over for the year, except we do have some surplus funds that we're expecting from the at last year, et cetera. This is workable regardless. And with the senior van, some days, if I remember correctly, and now we're talking about 3 or 4 hours of operation. Depends on whether we're gonna have one van or two. We're talking a couple $100 more. You're talking about $2,000 total, probably. And so, our budget's about 14.5 million.
So we haven't been paid yet for this, so.
No, I signed that payroll.
Just take it out of Annie's.
So
Give me
I
the whole
would say,
check. You can have all of it if it makes this happen better.
I would say this request is within the realm of being able to be covered, and it really won't move the needle one way or the other.
So there is a vote, a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you all for doing this.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much.
See you on
Good luck.
January
Yes,
11th.
we look forward
Absolutely.
to
Yeah,
seeing you
all
all
of
on
you will-
January.
Will there be a
11th.
volunteer sign up?
There is. Sign Up Genius is being created right now. We're just getting the details
Yeah.
on there, and we'll make it widely available so you can go ahead and sign up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
having us.
Next, presentation of status of current capital projects. Dennis, will you join us? And you brought binders.
Yeah, I always have them just in case. I hope I don't have to use them, but I have them. Yeah, after the great presentation on food and the event, I feel kind of like the person that comes on the conference at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You know, like talking about something dry like the capital plan, but
Just gonna have to make it quick.
I'll make it very quick. This can be a super cliff version, however you want to run it. We've given you a memo. We usually do this every fall, just before we come out with the budget, to kind of tell you where we are with the money that you gave us last year and where the projects are. We've broken into categories. They're very broad categories. I don't want to go through each project. I'm not going to bore you with that. You have the information. There are a couple points I want to make, and I'll do those quick. I think we're on track with almost all our projects, and I'll kind of go through just in general categories, and I'll start with buildings. We had 2 major projects. One is the highway garage, where we had structural work done. That's finished, thank goodness. The bays are closed in for the winter, which was great. It was getting a little tight in November, but it's great. That's almost done. We aren't quite done with that. We want to put some gutters up on the north side. They have not gone up. They probably won't go up until spring, given the weather and what we've got, all that needs to be done. We're trying to do that after the first of the year. We're trying to save some money there. I think we're going to do a lot of that through Tom, our buildings manager. There's a lot of the stuff that can be done on that in-house, so we're going to try to get as much of that done and save a few dollars there. Both of those are fairly expensive projects. I do want to mention that there is a typo on page 2 under buildings. I didn't catch that till today, but if you go down to the energy saving accounts, there's a total at the end, And in there, it shows a total of $9,989. It's actually 19,000. That was, when we were doing that, somehow the one got lost. So I just wanted to let you know with that. I don't know if you have any questions on buildings?
Dennis, the library, I remember going in there and seeing, the condition. How usable is the basement right now to get them through the winter? I know they had at one point needed to move some books around, close off large parts of it.
There was a lot of work with volunteers from the library, from staff, contractors, but the library in the basement is functional. Children's library is up and working. I think that we've, I don't want to make a promise we've taken care of all the leaks, but we've done about everything you can to the basement, short of probably jacking the building up and pouring a concrete wall around it. We've done everything we can, and it looks good. We probably could stop there, but we do feel that the one bathroom on one side needs to be taken care of, and we can isolate that so that when we're doing that work, the library on both sides is fully functional.
Okay.
So that's not going to disturb anything. Max?
There's 81 Main has been rehabbed a number of years ago, but we never rehabbed the sign that's out front. We did remove those trees that were blocking it. Is there any consideration of when that sign is going to get replaced?
I'd love to. I think that's something that probably we can talk about maybe when we do the budget meeting. We haven't budgeted money for it, but it can't be that expensive, and I agree with you. It's an eyesore and it needs to be changed. So I would agree there 100%. That's part of the reason why we come, is to get those ideas, and that way we can plan them into how we're going to do them on the capital plan. I think that's great. Any other questions on buildings? If not, on highways, I think that's the next one that comes up. We did a lot of work last year. I know from the capital plan, we spent about $230,000, both operating account and capital account. We put about $636,000 into our roads. So that was a huge summer for paving work. It doesn't leave a lot for this spring, but we always carry a little over, not knowing what's going to happen during the course of the winter. We're in a good position to go into next year. I don't want to go into it today. That wasn't the purpose, but I did give Evan and Greg a document on our paving program that was in the consent agenda. If you get a chance to look that over, it's been a question that's been around there for a long time in terms of how much we're spending, are we spending enough, and how do we decide what roads are being done. And I think it's good to have as information. I'll mention it up front, that was not an attempt to lead into a budget number. In fact, we're going to flatline for this coming year the operating budget and the capital budget for paving. We had a substantial increase on the floor last year. We're going to utilize that, and I think that will guide us through the next year. It's just a document that provides an indication of where we are and what we need to do as we go into the future for both the village and the town. That question always comes up, and we did it, and we came up with a number, and we provided that number in the memo, but it doesn't have any relation to any budget discussions. It's just a number.
It's really important information to have to make sure we're not losing infrastructure.
I do want to have on that document too, when it was done up, the print that was done that the CCRPC gave us, it's really hard to read some of those graphs, and I've asked them to reprint those on a full page in a color you can actually read. The original is readable, but as we've made copies, it's very difficult. So, any questions on highways?
Does that include sidewalks? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there was a comment in there about the Cirque to Forestdale sidewalk funds.
Yes.
That there's a multi-million-dollar sky bridge over the Cirque proposal from years ago. Can we free up that money for other things? How do we do that?
Yeah, I think the plan would be to do that when we meet on the capital, or when you meet on the capital plan and when you finally approve the capital plan, you can delegate those transfers at any point in time to do that. We finished up, we have two really major projects. Towers Road was one, we finished that. The problem with these projects, and I guess you learn in retrospect on a lot of them, is the grants just take a long time to go from A to Z, 5 to 7 years, and costs go up. And we would have been substantially in the hole on Towers Road if Aaron hadn't gone out and found another grant to help subsidize that. So we came out really about where we thought we were going to be on the Towers Road work. Now we've got Pinecrest coming up, and I have a concern that that also is gonna be high, and we're gonna go for another grant to see if we can offset that. But right now, that's one of our capital accounts that's on the low side. So if we can utilize funds that are in the capital account for walks or paths that we aren't reasonably going to build at any time, so use on projects where we already have grants, as opposed to taking money from undesignated funds or other place if we get short. So it's a pretty easy process. The staff can't do it. It has to be an action by you guys.
So it would be part of the,
Capital discussion. And so when we get through the budget and the capital, we'll make a motion to remove those funds from that line
right, so,
and reallocate.
And the project can still stay there. It's just a zero funded project at that point. We've got some of those on the books, probably more than we need, but we've got some of those there.
thank you.
The other project that's coming very close to being completed is the upgrade of the Susie Wilson Road intersections. The one at Lowe's, Pinecrest Drive, that's just about done. That should improve the traffic even with Starbucks coming online. I think Starbucks will be online somewhere in the February timeframe, but that should improve the traffic in that corridor. At least it won't degrade it any, so we'll be in pretty good shape there. That's almost ready to have the new controller installed. They'll be doing that in the cold weather. But that's sometimes the way it works. Let's see.
Maybe 1 minute on what a new controller is gonna do with the new signals.
Okay. The single controller helps control both our two intersections, the one at Pinecrest and then the one at Lowe's that comes out where the pharmacy is, as well as ties into the traffic signal on Route 15. And part of the problem is there's so many things going on at that intersection that the old controller cabinets, up until now, there's been really none that have been built that will handle that many controls at one point in time. Econolights, the manufacturer, they produced a whole new controller this year that can go up to, and I'll make it simple, 32 different sections. And you hit the ped pole on one of those intersections, it shuts everything down. And you want those pedestrian, especially in that traffic area where there's got 30,000 cars a day, you want to be able to make the traffic move. So if you're going to shut the pedestrian crossing going across Pinecrest, you want everything else to move, except for that one. But what happens is when it shuts down everything, then the traffic starts to back up onto Route 15. You can't make the left turn at 4 o'clock in the afternoon because you've got red light because somebody's crossing. This will alleviate that so that you'll be able to move traffic quicker and get around some of those pedestrian crossings. It also allows the signals to talk better, synchronize better. And we're actually synchronizing those farther down the Susie Wilson corridor, down to the one at Marketplace, and also tying into the one at Kellogg. The other thing we've done is we put radar control units up. You know, before we used to have the in-road electronics, which are not as good as the radar now. And the radars, you've got to see the little cameras up top. They're not taking pictures of your car, but they are showing the radar of what's moving, what's not. So they can also affect, you know, if in fact you've got a long backup of traffic and it can change that signal timing to move those cars through faster. So expensive piece of equipment, requires a whole new cabinet to go up. And there's going to be a fun couple of days trying to keep everything running while you're pulling the new and putting the old, or taking the old out and pulling in the new one. So that's going to be part of the game. But that's more in a minute, but close enough.
Good explanation.
Water lines, everything's on schedule with water lines. We are under design for that one water line we talked about, and we talked about the town center. That's being designed along Route 15. You won't see this in this capital plan, but I'll alert you to, we have another one. The state's planning to move ahead within the next 2 years to redo the intersection of Sand Hill Road and Route 15 and provide a signal and a whole arrangement on that. Our problem is we have asbestos cement water line. It's great water line. It's been in there for 30, 40 years. It doesn't hurt anybody as far as health goes or anything like that. It's all coated, but it has not a whole lot of shear strength. And so if you start to take the heavy construction equipment, when they start to redo that intersection and roll across those AC pipes, about 6 months later, you're going to have a water break. And about 6 months after that, you're going to have another water break. And so what we're doing is being proactive. We're gonna have an engineered design, and part of that's gonna be funded by the town and part by the state to replace that with ductile iron pipe across that intersection. And CWD is gonna be doing the same thing, working on their part, so that when they do the intersection, their contractor will also redo that water line. And we'll avoid that issue of a couple years, nice new intersection, new signals up, and you've got water popping out of the ground in the middle. Nobody needs that. So you're gonna see that in the next year's capital plan.
You have a lot of scar tissue.
Yeah. Sewer projects, we're working with the village on a couple of upgrades to the pump stations. Most of our sewage flow goes through Susie Wilson. And then on that side of town, and then to West Street and to the treatment plant. Both of the village's stations need SCADA upgrades. About 99% of the flow to Susie Wilson, which is the village pump station, is town flow. So we're paying for that, and we're sharing a cost on West Street. But those are gonna be upgraded to new controls, and that'll make those stations more efficient. Heavy equipment vehicles, nothing changed there. I've indicated what we've purchased. All the trucks we've purchased have come in. Everything else, money is being put aside in the fire department for the future. Nothing's changed as far as Parks and Rec for capital equipment. I don't have much information on park facilities. I can answer or try to answer any questions you have on those.
Dennis, I have a question about Indian Brook. A&R recently released a list of dams with high risk.
Yes,
And Indian Brook is on that.
that's correct.
Can you explain why it's on that list and what we're gonna need to do?
It's almost easier to, I can explain why it's on the list. It's an old earthen dam. It's in decent shape. One of the problems we have is the controls. Almost any dam, if you want to release the water, you've got to be able to utilize the controls on those dams to essentially allow the dam to flow, other than over the top of the dam. Those valves, we've known for a long time, don't operate. Okay, so that the only thing you can do if you had, and so far there hasn't been any issues, but there is the potential that if you had a situation where a huge hurricane came up the coast and you had a tremendous amount of water. I mean, we're used to 3 inches of rainfall and it causing problems. You know, if you had the Louisiana type storm with 15 inches of rain in 24 hours or something like that, it would overtop the dam. Okay, when you overtop the dam, you start to lose the control over what that dam is built for. It's built to hold back the water. It's not built to have water going over the top. And there's a spillway. But at the same point in time, you would be, if you knew that was coming, you could release water out of the dam and hold it behind the dam and just eliminate a good part of that problem, the risk downstream. And there is a risk downstream because that feeds all the way down. It's a stream that goes by this office and goes by the high school. If that dam ever burst, there's a lot of homes up in that area that are right in the zone. There's not a lot of time to get people out, so it's on the list. What the state has done is they've got a grant program going. It doesn't cost the town anything. Ally is really, through Parks and Rec, responsible for the dam, but both Erin and I, whenever she has the dam meeting, we work together with her on that. And the state is going to be looking at what can be done with that dam and the ways to fix that dam, and any of the issues that are associated with it. So that's going to be coming up during the course of the next year. We'll have answers that we'll be able to come back to you. The dam is inspected every few years. The last inspection was fine. It's not like water's popping out of it or anything like that. It's in good shape, but it's a higher risk dam than a dam that has controls already in place that you can, in fact, manually move. So, and it's not that an old structure like that. You just can't send a diver down and fix it. It's just not going to happen. And it may come to the point where at some point, if the dam really has to be rehabilitated, you may have to empty it, fix the controls, redo that. That's not in the cards for the next couple of years anyway, but we need to know exactly what needs to be done, and that's the next stage.
Thank you.
So, on line 5, I guess, under the parks, it's the firearms signage. No expenditures have yet been made from that. It says pending outcome of discussions on the firearms ordinance, but aren't we at a position now where we can start expending that?
Yeah, we have just temporary signage up right now, but Andy pointed it out to me earlier today too. It was a good reminder to touch base with Ally and start to get some more permanent signage up.
Great, thank you.
I did forget to mention, I'm not gonna go into any detail now, but when we do the budgets, it's both in the operating budget and in the Public Works capital plan of the budget, and we'll be doing that in January. We did change the equipment replacement plan, because last year we had to buy a couple trucks, and we've looked at that, and I've worked with Sarah on that to try to come up with, it's a combination of both a leasing and purchase plan, so the fund stays solvent. If you were to go out, and I know everybody we would like to also move those trucks so they're replaced quicker. You know, every truck that we've had a problem with has been on year 10 or 11, and the warranty runs out at year 7 and 8. You know, all of a sudden we have a $15,000 or $20,000 expense. So we're trying to get those moved back, and we've done a little bit of that, but just to afford what we need, and this isn't really new equipment. I think there's one new piece in there that replaces something that, small excavator replacing a backhoe, but they're similar. The only way to make that work is a combination of leases and purchase. If you try to purchase those, you essentially run a deficit in that account all the way up to about year 10, and then you come out of the hole, and that's not a way to run that account by borrowing from other accounts. But if you do it through a combination of leases and purchases, the balance stays positive throughout the life of that next 10 years. It does mean that more money has to go in, a little bit more than it's going in now. So you'll see that in both those budgets. It's not a lot, but it's enough to get us to a point where we can start to move some of those trucks back a little bit in terms of life. Our maintenance costs last year were down. They've been down the last couple of years, and so we're moving in the right direction. We just have to try to get there quicker.
Dennis, I saw in here that sidewalk plow was part of this, which brought up just a question that I had, and it may be a discussion that the select board has had in the past. But with the changes to the school district busing, I know anecdotally that, we've had people certainly coming to me via the school district, who have had problems with not getting the kids to the bus, but rather just, because of, how the sidewalks, get treated or when they get tended to. A lot of kids end up having to walk into the road. With this new plow, is that something that is mitigating that a bit, or do we still need time because it's so early in winter to see whether or not that's going to be helpful to the people who have claimed it? I know that I saw your email that you sent to us, as far as the winter plan, and I know you're bringing a lot of new people on board, and I know that it's not terribly attractive, to find people who want to go out and do this. So I'll stress by saying that, I completely understand that it's a very, very difficult job to get, covered and to make sure that sidewalks are, cleared out enough for kids to be walking to catch a bus by 7 a.m. But I'm just wondering, is there positive progress being made towards, getting kids to specific stops and having sidewalks clear for them? Or is this something that is just going to continue to be a work in progress?
It's a work in progress. We've made some progress. We've talked to the school off and on, and there may be a particular intersection where the kids are waiting, where we're maybe plowing across the street because that's the natural pattern that makes sense to get where we're going. It's easy enough for us to send that sidewalk plow across the street, pick up that corner and come back and then continue our route. So we're doing some of that. We've changed some of our there's a Tanglewood is one road where there's basically no sidewalks at all. So there's a couple things going on there. One of which is we're trying to send our plow truck out there earlier. So although they have to walk on the road, it's a flat road that in our scheme of things 4 years ago would have been done at the end. Now we're trying to do that at the start. So that's kind of an easy way to accommodate some of that. Part of the problems is, in order to pick up the area where the kids are walking, a lot of those sidewalks are old sidewalks that are 4 feet wide, and our sidewalk plow is 4 feet wide, and 4 feet with grass and everything else tied up, we tear up a lot of turf, and I put that in on. It's just been happening. But I think the combination of, you can't move as fast in those areas either, because if it was 5 feet, you could run. At 4 feet, you're trying to be careful, so you're slower. we also don't have the personnel. I mean, that's the big issue now. I've got more pieces of equipment, but it's just, we just don't have the personnel to put on them. And we've tried, we've got another person that we're trying to talk to now to see if after the first of the year they may come on. They're losing a job in one location and one of our employees knows them, so we're trying to get them to maybe come on. I think we could do better if we had better coverage.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to get a feel for whether or not it's a monetary issue. Like if we, were to suggest or, able to put more money into the budget for that, or if it's less that, which is what we ran across with the school district and hiring drivers. It was not a money issue at all. It was just that there were no drivers that were looking for work. So even though we had the ability to hire them, they just literally weren't there. We're
in the same boat. We have one of our positions right now is open. I have the money this year I could afford to spend on that, but with the 2% or 2.5% unemployment, it's just hard to find. We found one temp who's been real great working for us. We've advertised, we've gone to agencies. It's just really hard to find anybody that wants to do that as a temporary employee. And quite honestly, it's hard to justify a permanent employee because then you have a permanent employee year round and you really need them for that winter operations. Now, I know summer is the 4th of July and the rest of it's winter, but for all intents and purposes, we don't need full-time people who are plowing sidewalks in the middle of the summer. I need some drivers, I need some equipment operators, but I really need a good quality temp in the winter who can come in, work from November till about April, and then go back and do something else. Ideally, if I had a couple people with some experience who could do that, we could do more. So it's more a problem of finding people than it is having the money or having the equipment. At this point, it's a people problem.
All right, great. Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. It's, I think, going to go a long way towards people who have asked me about it,
And we're still trying to hire. If we can find a good quality person who can do that, we'll hire them on because winter's long.
Volunteering, Evan?
No, I have a full-time job. One of the things I was saying is, though, we have been off and on talking with the school district a little bit about where we can connect, pun intended, town sidewalks with paths to get kids and others to walk to school. So we are able to do paths. Most of our paths are at least 6 to 8 feet wide, so we can run our plow down a path a whole lot easier than we can a 4-foot sidewalk. And if we can get kids to, in certain areas, walk versus taking the bus or having us plow difficult areas, then we can get them to school faster. Tanglewood is one of those areas. And so that's one of the things that we're talking with the school district about is we might have to actually invest in a segment of sidewalk to get to a path, but it'll work out in the long run better.
The other thing just hit me that we've got a study going with the Regional Planning Commission on a portion of Tanglewood. We just repaved the first half of it. The second half, we didn't repave for a reason. The storm pipes are in there in really pretty bad shape, and we got a project to fix the storm pipes. But the study is also looking at what do we do on the surface. And one of the alternatives that we're looking at, which I like, is it's a 40-foot wide road. So we're sending a survey out to the residents. If we can bring that road into 30 feet, and again, trying to be cost effective, bring the pavement on one side into 30 feet, take that 10 feet, create a 3 to 4 foot buffer, and raise the pavement. So you essentially, all you're redoing is creating a portion of the road, making it into a sidewalk on the one side with a grass strip in between. You got to do something with the cross grades and everything else. But before we repave the road, if we're going to rip up the storm drain system, why not have a section of that has, that way you're not tearing up curbing, you're saving that cost, you're not pouring concrete sidewalk, you're pouring a paved walkway, which what used to be where you parked in your car. And so if you can give up parking on one side of the road, maybe, still a 30-foot wide road, one side has curbs, and then you hit that strip where there's the grassed area and the walk, and then you have another curb. So we're not changing anything as far as their property line. So if they've got flowers, plants, whatever else, they stay there. It's an inexpensive way to maybe get a sidewalk. It's gonna take us a couple years to fund that and get that done, but if that works, that might be the model to do the rest of Tanglewood, moving back towards Sand Hill Road. Because it's relatively inexpensive compared to pulling out curb, pulling in both sides. You start to talk about costs on a road that you just can't afford. So, there's options.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the, the
Gonna try.
avenues of exploration.
Okay. Paths, we just finished the one on Towers Road. That was completed this fall. Pinecrest is gonna go next summer. We've got a lot of people who want that sidewalk on the far section of Pinecrest, the farther northern portion. It got held up for over a year in right-of-way. We had all the right-of-way acquired. One of the residents passed away. It went into probate court. All of a sudden, you can't get clearance on right-of-way, and the project sits for a year and a half. So we finally cleared that. All those documents have gone to the state. We're gonna bid it probably in January or February for an early spring construction. Hopefully that last section where you don't have any sidewalks and you've got a very narrow road, a drainage ditch, and I've seen a lot of people, kids walking that, and moms with baby care. It's just crazy. We need a sidewalk there, and hopefully we've got a grant for it. It's gonna be expensive, but we think we can build that this next coming summer and be done with it. So that hopefully is the last big one we've got right now in the pipeline. Stormwater, I've listed all the stormwater projects. A lot of those we completed this year. The only thing I made a comment on here is that the worry I have for the future is stormwater funding. We've got 3 more major projects, not even to get to phosphorus, although all of them include some phosphorus removal, just to get us through the flow restoration plan that was approved a couple years ago. The village completed one up here. On Fairview, we've got one more in the village, which will go to construction this summer, one more in the town to go this summer, and then we've got a larger one to go probably 2 to 3 years from now. That one is more than $1 million project. It's probably going to be, original estimate was like 1.2, it's now about 1.6 or 1.7. And we're going to have, farther out it goes, the better we'll be able to fund it, but we also want to get it done to meet our permit requirements. So that's the only one I'm worried about the money crunch on. But we'll get through all the rest of them and all our other grants that we've got for stormwater, and that's the only one that I'm gonna be crossing my fingers that when the time comes, we get a reasonable bid and a reasonable contractor and can build it. And we're gonna go after other grants to see if we can get them.
Is the state working to try to get municipalities funding towards this stormwater mandate? I mean, I know they were talking about it.
We've had great help in terms of the gravel roads. We've gotten money under the Better Roads program, and there's another one, and I can't remember the name of it right now, through the Regional Planning Commission. We've gotten grants of $25,000 here and $35,000 there, and with minimal matches, 10% match, which is great. And so where we had money set aside in the projects and in the capital plan and other places to put gravel on the roads, we're able to use those grants to fix the roads and put the gravel on the roads. And so we've not had to spend some of that other money. The other thing, if we get declared, if FEMA declares the disaster we had on Halloween a problem, most of that damage is on the gravel roads. We can do stone line ditches and do other things on those gravel roads using FEMA money and state money, and at about a 90% match, which saves more money in the program for projects like the ones we've got coming up. So that's what we're trying to do, is to basically stretch it out as much as we can. But when you get a very large project like the last one on our list, it's going to be hard because you need hard dollars to build it, and that's where it's going to be tight. After that, we should have a phosphorus control plan in place that we know where we're heading for the next 20 years. We'll be able to better estimate what it's going to cost us. And then we can all sit down and figure out, how do we fund that? And in the memo, there's some ideas that we can talk about later, but that's it. Other projects are ongoing. We have IT projects. natural resources management projects, and that's it. So I don't know if there's any other questions. I think the whole purpose of this was to get input as we develop the capital plan for next year. If there's other things you'd like to see on it or questions you want answered, you let us know. We'll come back in January and come back to you with answers. If not,
Just a question, does this come with on our budget day, or is this a separate discussion?
We've been talking with Sarah about the best timing for it. I'm not sure, do you know where you are right now, sir?
we had planned it for budget day. I think my budget, the highway budget and public works budget is gonna be pretty simple. I'm gonna be honest with you, I just don't think that's gonna go very long. And I think that time will allow us time to deal with the capital plan on budget day, and that's what our plan is. You know, so if you work fast and approve the highway budget, we can get to the capital, I'm just kidding. But if you're, I'm serious, I think that the highway budget will go pretty quickly, the operating budget. And so that we hope to fit in the capital budget the same day, but if we find that that's just plain not gonna work, then we'll just have to schedule another time frame.
So we have the operating budget in the reading file today. I don't think we have the capital budget yet. Just want to make sure we have it in time. If we're going to try to do it on the 6th, we need to have it.
We will get it to you. The whole, we had talked about getting that to you sometime either later this week or early next week, so you had it before you went in. You're not gonna get the written description. It's really gonna be a spreadsheet. And you can see on the spreadsheet how we've allocated the 2 cents in new capital funds and what projects we're going after. What I found that's helpful to review that is if you kind of take this and that document together, it goes real quick. Because on here, we've kind of given you an idea of how much money we've got in the bank now, how much we're gonna be putting in this year, and that other document just tells you, what are we gonna do with the new 2 cents? Where's that gonna go? And then it kind of fits together. But the plan was to do it one day.
If you don't mind, one quick note, a thank you to Dennis and Aaron. They've been working with the village. Right outside this building is Densmore. Densmore is washed out twice now, once on Christmas Eve, on Halloween, and then again, after it was fixed, it overtopped again from some other rain and stuff. So right now it's currently closed, but Dennis and Aaron have been helping the village get ready for a FEMA grant replacement. The village doesn't really do much in FEMA because a lot of all the roads are paved, and so you don't tend to get washouts in pavement. This one did. Mention it. We get a lot of water that comes through the Densmore corridor, through this culvert, past the high school, and then beyond. So it's really important that we're able to manage that water through. Comes from the town, comes through the village, then heads to the Winooski. So, thank you for all that.
They're FEMA sticklers on procedure, and so we're trying to help the village in terms of making sure those procedures get followed. Because if FEMA declares a disaster, then, which our intent, we believe they're really going to, and we understand they are, then you've got to have everything kind of done in a particular order, and they get very squeamish if you get out of their way of doing business. So we're trying to work with the village to make sure that whatever information they collect fits in those boxes, so that when the time comes, you know, we can help them process the paperwork. And it's also, it's a good learning process, and for our purposes, we're trying to involve other people in the village, Jim, Chelsea, Ricky, Hamlin, other people with our process that we've been through 3 or 4 times. So there's other people that know how to do it, and maybe the next time if it gets hit on something else, they can run with the ball themselves. They could now. It's just easier to have somebody that's gone through it once already or a couple times.
Did you say it's the FEMA? You think that grant is coming through that, or excuse me, the is that from the Halloween storm?
Yeah, it's first it has to be a declaration,
Yeah.
and our understanding is Chittenden County qualified. We've been on the phone a number of times about that. Once it's qualified, then they'll come back to us and say, okay, here's the projects that are eligible. They send a team out again, and that's where you've got to have all your pictures, all your information, when did it occur, who worked. You know, it's timesheets for individuals. It's which truck did they drive. were they into work that day type of thing. I mean, they run those kind of checks. So you've got to have all those things together, so when they walk through the door, you have really two things. One, we've already spent this money, and yes, that's eligible. Now we need to go the next step, which is to actually put in a permanent fix. Now you need to go out and do it a particular way in order to get those funds eligible, so you can get that permanent fix done.
Great. Yeah, I just hadn't heard that it had gotten to that point. So yeah, I mean, right, we're still not there
We're still
yet,
waiting.
but-
We're still waiting, but we think we're going to get it. So we're planning on the premise we're going to get it. Okay.
Dennis,
you very
thank
much.
you. We'll see you in January.
Yes, have a good holiday.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
All right, next item of business, update from the governance subcommittee. We have a guest, George Tyler, Vice Chair of the Village Trustees.
No, I'm the vice chair.
I
I'm the
just said
chair
that.
of the Essex Town, Essex Junction Joint Subcommittee on Governance.
Thank you. You are that as well. Multiple hats.
Yes. So, thanks. Can everyone hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Great. I would like to have gotten you a written report, but we didn't have time. Our last subcommittee meeting was on Thursday, and I didn't want to produce a public document without running it by the other subcommittee members, so we didn't have the time. So you're just going to have to bear with me. I've got some notes, and plus I have Max and Andy here, so that when I forget stuff or make really big mistakes, they'll let me know about it. So Thursday, I'm going to kind of do a couple of global things first. We got draft charter language that Ann Janda has been working on with Dan Richardson. And this is boilerplate language to create a new municipal charter. And I think if you'll recall, back about a month or two ago, we discussed it at one of our joint meetings, that the subcommittee would, once we got through making some recommendations, we would transform into a charter committee. And we would begin working with Dan and Ann in going through this boilerplate language and looking at what other municipal charters look like, looking at the good parts of the town charter, the good parts of the village charter, and trying to compose a new community municipal charter. So that we're going to start doing that probably in January. And what I had floated an idea before the subcommittee on Thursday, that there are two sort of technical / political issues about this. One has to do with representation. What's the representation model that we would want to have in a new community? And what is the tax reconciliation adjustment model that you're going to put in place if you're going to bring the village and the town tax rates together? So those have got technical components, but they've also got political components, and you've got choices there. So the idea I floated out with the subcommittee on Thursday was that we would begin working on the charter, sort of a lot of the background stuff, a lot of the technical details, transfer of property, responsibilities of the manager, and so forth. But we would leave holes in the charter in terms of the representation model and the taxation model. And we would come up with a couple of different ideas. And then we had talked about using annual meetings in March and in April, the village and town annual meetings, to get community feedback on some things. And I think probably those are the two things that interest most people. If we look at local media, that's what people are mostly talking about, taxation and representation. So the idea was that we would use the opportunity of annual meeting to get some community feedback and engagement on those two issues. So I think we're going to float that as soon as we meet with the full boards, the trustees and the select board. But I wanted to let you know that we had discussed that on Thursday. And it also helps me segue into what we actually did. On Thursday, we talked about a lot of the work was on the taxation plan. And as you know, we have to try to reconcile, if we're going to put the village and the town budgets together, we'd have to figure out how you're going to phase it in. Putting everything together at once would cause a very, very significant increase for homeowners in the town outside the village. And so the idea is that if you had some kind of a multi-year phase-in, and Al was speaking to this, Al and I was talking about this earlier, that it would really lower the threshold and really decrease the pain and the anxiety around consolidation. And so we needed to come up with some idea for when a length of time would be, an appropriate length of time. And one of the things that staff had kind of asked for, and we thought made sense, is to really consider a 12-year phase-in. The 12-year phase-in for that, because the village still has some bonded debt, and it won't be paid off until 2035. So we've gotten 12 more years on it. And so the idea is that, so at that point, the village would have to have a separate tax rate anyway from the rest of the town for that 12-year period. So the idea is that you would set up the phase-in period to coincide with that. And when we have a joint meeting, Sarah can show you the actual numbers, but it was somewhere in the vicinity for the average home outside the village. If we did a 12-year phase-in, it was something on the order of $23 or $24 a year. Is that, was it 25? Okay. And so we thought that was a pretty good number. The staff has to start putting a few stakes in the ground in terms of getting us real numbers. And we had gone, what's 1 year look like? How about 3 years? How about 5, 7, 10? How about 12? So they needed us to get real and make a decision. So we came to that decision that we would look at a 12-year phase-in. The other thing that we looked at is to consider special districts and to somehow have some portion of the village's current expenditures remain just with the village for the period of 12 years. They wouldn't get phased in. And there are a couple of different ways that could be done. Again, the idea is to further lower the amount of the dollar amount that you're transferring from the village over to the average town outside the village home, to bring it down even a few dollars more below 25 down to like $20 or $22. The whole issue of special districts and special taxing districts is a little complex. We've had some discussion with Dan Richardson about it. There's a bunch of different ways it's done in municipal charters. And so we're going to be meeting with Dan on Thursday of this week to get more specific about it and get some more specific ideas. So the idea that we have in mind right now, to back up, is that if we can come up with a special district proposal that makes sense and Dan thinks would work, the governance subcommittee would then make a recommendation to the two joint boards that we have two maybe three different taxation schemes that you roll out in front of the community at annual meeting. One where you're just phasing in the current cost, but you're not creating any special districts in the village. And then maybe another or two others where you're creating some kind of special district in the village. And we would present those at annual meeting and try to get some community feedback on what people think makes sense. The other thing that we did was to finalize and, Max, go I ahead.
just want to emphasize that this special district you're talking about doesn't require a separate board to govern.
Right. This was one of the issues. I think when we first started talking 2 years ago now, when we started talking this whole process, we were thinking of, well, is there some way we could, for example, have the town library and recreation district have those costs just stay with the town just go with the town outside the village library and recreation just go, since we consider them, quote, non-essential services, just go with the village, and create sort of special recreation, library, cultural districts, so that you would sort of separate those costs out and again lower the impact of the reconciliation of the two tax rates. But doing something like that would require creating separate elected boards, we thought. So since we're trying to reduce the level of governance complexity and not increase it, we didn't want to go in that direction. So the kinds of special districts we're looking at wouldn't require additional layers of government. They would require maybe committees like the Town Energy Committee or the Village's Capital Committee, some kind of an appointed committee that would just make a recommendation. But all the taxing and spending authority would be with the elected board. Everyone following me? Yes. Okay. So the other, any other anything else with that?
Thanks
Good?
for that clarification.
Okay. The other thing that we looked at was I sort of wrote up a draft language for our justification for the representation plan. The representation model that we're recommending is 2 seats for what is currently the town outside the village, consisting of Chittenden districts 8-1 and 8-3, 2 seats for Chittenden 8-2, which is the village, and then 3 seats at large. I wanted to go over that with the other members of the subcommittee. We discussed it. We made a few adjustments in the language and the justification and so forth. One of the things we struggled with was we were initially calling everything Chittenden 8-1, Chittenden 8-2, Chittenden 8-3, and the population, it gets a little quirky trying to call it that, because Chittenden 8-1 and 8-3, the population is a little bit larger than 8-2, so if it's going strictly by that, then you'd probably have to divide it up a little bit more. So I think we came to the decision that what we'll do is just call it former town outside the village, former town within the village, that type of thing. 2 seats for one of those, 2 seats for the other, and then 3 seats at large. And Max and Andy, I don't know if you want to add anything at this point. Am I good?
I think you're good.
Okay. So that's what we're going to recommend, but I think we want to go into our logic for why we thought that, and a lot of it was based on the survey, the community survey we took, but also looking at other information and other data. I think that's pretty much it. As I said, we're meeting with Dan Richardson on Thursday, and one of the things that we're going to recommend is that we probably, who's ever chair, at this point it would be the chair and the vice chair of the subcommittee, but maybe all 4 of the subcommittee members or some other representation, would go with Dan in January or February, once we have a few of these things really figured out, and meet with the Vermont Legislative Council. Because Dan is giving us this information, and we're making a lot of assumptions that this is going to pass muster when if this charter gets approved and it finally goes to the legislature. But we thought at this point it might be good to have a reality check and go meet with whoever is going to be the chair of the Gov Ops Committee in the Vermont Legislature, and also Vermont Legislative Council, to make sure that we're all in sync and we're all on the same page on this stuff. And let me see if I missed anything else. Okay, I think we're good. So I think we're probably gonna wrap it up on Thursday and take a break for the holidays, and probably not have any more meetings until January. But we'll be meeting whenever. What I'll be doing is writing up a full report of all this stuff, and we'll have it ready for a joint board meeting sometime in early January. Good? Andy?
I just wanna, we haven't seen the agenda yet for Thursday, is that gonna come out soon?
We're finalizing it today, should be out tomorrow.
I can tell you it had one business item. Meet with Dan Richardson and discuss, there wasn't I think that was it.
Can I ask that it be separated out, though, because the tax discussion I did recuse myself from, so it'd be easier, I think, to deal with documenting that and so forth, if I can.
Right.
It's separate.
Right. Gentlemen, I don't know if Ann, I haven't seen it. I know Ann's flashed something by me on Friday, and I haven't, I don't remember what it was.
She had sent something out today. I don't think it's been posted yet, so I'll
Okay.
send her a note right
Okay.
now.
All right, good.
I mean, if it
Thanks.
can't be done, that's fine, but it'd be easier for me
Well,
to.
I think then what you want to do is break it into, what would you prefer to be? We can probably do you want to recuse at the beginning, or which would you like? Because we probably break it into a couple of pieces.
I'll bring my ukulele and.
All right, that's cool.
It doesn't matter which
All
one.
right. All right. Good. Questions?
So George, you said you're gonna be putting all of these comments into your formal recommendations to both boards.
Right.
And we'll get that sometime over the
In
holidays.
January, right.
So just in the meantime, can you just briefly explain a little bit more about what you mean regarding special taxing districts for the village?
Right. Waterbury has a utility district. There used to be a village of Waterbury and a town of Waterbury. The village of Waterbury converted itself to a utility district. So it does some very basic functions, utility functions. It can own property. And I guess it can tax and spend just separate from the rest of the town. There are downtown improvement districts, for example, downtown revitalization districts. There is, I'm trying to think, let me see, Westminster and Manchester have special taxing districts. One is like a special highway district for part of I think the village is considered a special highway district for the town. So the idea is that we would declare in some format either part of either the village downtown or the entire village as some kind of a special taxing district that would have a higher tax rate. And our thought is that money would be used right now to spend down the village's existing capital project list. We just heard from Dennis tonight that you have a capital project list in the town, and I think some of you know the village has a substantial. We do our capital project stuff a little different than the town does, so we have a rolling list that we add on to. And so the idea is that when if merger happens, that list would be locked in place, and the village, as a special district, that money would just be spent to pay down the village's capital costs. So that would have the effect of two things. It would, first of all, reduce the transfer of expenditures from the village into the town general fund upon merger, first of all. And second of all, since those expenditures would be paid down just by the village, it would also, because in a merged community, we'd all be paying for each other's, the village currently helps pay for the town's capital projects, but the town does not help pay for the village's capital project. That dynamic changes. So we'd all be paying for the same capital projects, but this would be a list of capital projects that would remain with village taxpayers for the 12-year period. Okay. Right. I know does everyone follow me on that? Mm-hmm. Okay.
But you also mentioned a separate kind of district for parks and library. So that's
yes,
another district you're considering?
Yeah, we're not going to do that because the reason is that if you have to have you have to have things pretty fixed. You have to say it's going to be like the village right now has a penny on the tax rate economic development district. Okay, so that's a set amount. It's just fixed to an algorithm. It's a certain amount of money, and it has to be spent pretty much on a pretty fixed number of things. If you have a library district or fire district, you need to have a separate elected body that has taxing and spending authority, because you're going to have budgeting differences and spending decisions made year in and year out. So you have to create an elected board. There are lots of towns and villages.
But you don't need an elected board for a utility district.
No. I see. So,
but
for a downtown district, for a downtown improvement district, for example, you would have an appointed committee. Mm-hmm. So, as I said, that's similar to any of the committees that the select board and the trustees presently have. Mm-hmm. You appoint a committee. They have recommendation authority. They look at they know how much money is coming in. They know the work that needs to be done. They make a recommendation for how you should spend the money, but they don't. The final decision making is with the elected body.
Thank you. Any questions? Andrew?
Good.
Pat?
Yeah, actually, so it's actually not really a question for you, George, but rather for Andy and Max. Since you're our representatives to this subcommittee, I'm wondering if you could take even 20 or 30 seconds, just your thoughts about the representation structure, why you recommended it, or even honestly, if you don't, I would like to know, what your thoughts are, because, I think that as we've brought this issue or, this particular topic to the larger 10 members, that, there have been lots of different opinions. But, I'm just trying to get a feel for, where people are standing on the issue.
Actually, I think that's gonna be in the part of the write-up.
Yes.
But- Okay.
I mean, they can certainly speak for themselves. But that is exactly, I tried to put each person's, that's why it's sort of taking long. I wanted to make sure I got everyone's reasoning for it.
Okay, if it's
But-
going to be in
but
the write-up, then I
there's
don't
no need
wanna-
to keep you in suspense.
That's not
You
till
guys are-
January. I'd love to hear.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I thought it would be, I used the survey information and information from folks I talked to, thinking that having representation from folks within the village and then those from without the village, outside the village, of two each, with three at large, being the dominant, being three as opposed to just two, so that they're not all equal. I wanted to have the at-large be greater. During the transition time, when if the merger passes, as things are getting put together, that there's good representation going on there. And then at the end of that transition period, whatever the boards decide, whether it's 5 or 7 years or something, that sunsets and goes to the all at large, to have this one community piece. But as we're working together to try to get all the pieces fit together, I thought that made the most sense, so that's why I was supporting that one.
And I am in favor of staying with at large. I didn't bring my notes as to all the reasons why. But I've also been posing another question with regard to representation as with regard to whether it's related to merger.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so, if it's a good idea to have representative town government, it's a good idea whether we merge or not. And because the survey results were pretty ambiguous as to what, we're not, I don't think our intent should be to find the path through all the information we have for whichever one we think is most likely to pass. As Alan said, if you've got 8 reasons why people don't like it, they'll only vote for, only one of them will trigger them to vote no. And so I've been proposing the idea of having an a la carte vote rather than a ball of wax vote, right? So instead of having an article that says, do you accept this new charter, with everything included in it, I'm thinking we should have, here's a new representation model, yes or no. Here's Australian ballot, yes or no. Here's the merger, the terms of the merger, yes or no. So that, in the end, you could end up with better governance, even whether merger passes or not, or you could potentially have a different governance model whether merger passes or not.
Right. So it's not an all or nothing.
Right. That's I've been trying to bring up discussion about that, and again, Alan mentioned that as well, that it only takes one reason for people to vote against it. So.
Great. Yeah. Thank you both. I appreciate.
Andy, you said you've been
Perspective.
trying to bring that up. Has it not been something that's been discussed all that much?
Well, I brought it up in governance meetings, and the discussion there is that it should be discussed by the select board.
By the joint boards.
No, by
Oh,
the select
select-
board, because, governance of the town is the purview of the select board. And, I know it's been said that, people are willing to accept a merger if they get representation. But they're not related. You could have representation without merger. And if you do it the way that I've posed it, then it's only elected on the town ballot. The merger change, the representation change would only be on the town ballot. The common ballot would include the merger terms. And so it would be a separate discussion, separate article, separate decision. It's like, and I know I don't know, did you see, I sent you an email with kind of my thoughts on that, and you responded, and I responded back again, trying to clarify what I had said in the first one. You know, we haven't, as a select board, spent a lot of time actually talking about this. What we, you know, we've, back in March of whatever, when we had that all-day meeting at the high school, everybody was asked, you know, what's your ultimate goal? And that's kind of what we're still writing on, is the comments that were made there. We haven't really talked about, by ourselves, as a select board, where we think we're going. And so, I'm concerned that, yeah, the tax thing may cause issues with getting merger passed. And so if you bundle all these other changes in with that, you might lose it all. That's fine.
I haven't responded to that email you sent.
Yeah,
but I've
I
been
know, that's
thinking
fine,
a lot
that's
about
fine. It requires a lot of thought. I know, I
does.
understand, yeah.
Annie, you look like you have questions.
So you you were impelled to consider this through your own thoughts to I guess I'm trying to figure out what that looks like, what that offering looks like. Do you know?
Yeah, so I've thought a lot about it. Our charter uses the word select man and select men 63 times. So you have an article that says, go to gender neutral language, yes or no. Then you have another article that says, you could do this a couple of ways. You could say, here's a new representative model, yes or no. Or you could say, have an advisory vote that said, should the select board work toward a representative model? And then you could do the years-long committee of figuring out how to draw the lines and all that kind of stuff. And then there's another article that says Australian ballot for the budget, yes or no. And then you have a fourth article that says, do you accept the terms of the merger agreement? This is a different model because it's not dissolving two charters and writing a new one. It's modifying the existing town charter and dissolving the village charter, which has some political concerns around it. But that's what it would look like, and the town ballot would have all four of those questions on it. The village ballot would say, do you accept dissolution of, well, I guess they'd have to be, you can't have one pass, and you can't, you can't dissolve you have to figure out how to word that.
I don't know how you do that.
So I think we need to see the governance subcommittee's recommendations, and then this board definitely needs to talk about what the select board needs, what our responsibilities are, and it's definitely worth considering the suggestions you're making. But I don't think any of us are prepared to go that deeply into
Yeah, and it's not on the agenda, so I didn't really intend to go there tonight.
And
So.
I'm sorry, I was just stream of consciousness asking you, and I hope I didn't frustrate you, but, thank you. But I appreciate your ability to, off the cuff, tell me those thoughts.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments for George?
I just want to clarify, you know, we did discuss this with Andy, but as I said, in the past, when the village trustees have amended their charter, we didn't form a joint committee with the select board to help us do it, and vice versa. And so if that's what this is about, then the select board just wants to change its own charter. That's a separate conversation.
Yes.
I would also say that I started looking at the draft charter information that Ann and Dan Richardson put together for us. And I started looking at some other municipal charters. And I would only say, if we can get over our loyalty to our charters for a little bit, I know, and it's a good thing to be loyal to one's charter, I think. But boy, there's a tremendous opportunity. There's all kinds of things you can do. There are municipal charters that have specific items about transparency, about how you run a particular department and so forth, how you do planning. So, I mean, I would say, yes, and I think it's a good discussion, but I also say you might want to consider this to be a remarkable opportunity to write a community charter, to really look at a lot of the other charters and pick what's best about all of them and really create a nice charter for the community for the rest of the century. The other point I wanted to make is that what we're recommending for the representation model is that this would be, I mean, we basically said it would be a transitional model that would last for a certain period of years, after which time it would transition, it would default to be all at large, because we couldn't anticipate it doing anything else. So we said after a certain period of time, the new elected board would have that opportunity to either come up with a different model of representation or do nothing and have it all default to at large. So that's really part of the consideration. The reason for that is that it would kind of do the same thing that Andy is talking about. Once you've had a consolidated community and everyone's more or less comfortable, then you could have a separate conversation and a whole separate effort devoted to figuring out the representation model that works for the community and works for the elected board. And it would give you that instead of trying to do all that as part of taxation and everything else. So we're kind of, in some ways, talking about the same thing. But stay tuned.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
George and Andy and Max, Raj, who's not here, for your incredibly hard work on this committee. Large numbers of hours, so.
Everything good?
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
George.
And Annie is covered for.
And Annie for covering Andy. Thank you so much. And Ann and Dan and Greg and Evan. It's just a lot of work that everyone's doing for this, so thank you. Next item of business, approve expenditure of capital equipment funds for replacement of SCBA refilling station. Chief Cole, will you join us? Thank you for your patience while we got to this part of the agenda.
Good evening. You have before you a memorandum to request the expenditure of funds from the.
Can you just get to the other chair?
Okay. So you have before you a memorandum to expend funds from the capital fund that we've been contributing for the past few years from operating over to capital for fire department expenditures for SCBA. Our current SCBA refilling station, also known as a cascade system. These systems are located at the firehouse. They do make some that are mobile that can go on a vehicle. We don't have one. Ours is in the station. It stopped working in mid-October. The company that sold and serviced that has since retired. The gentleman spends part of his time in Florida, and he stopped selling that model. And so we've looked at other vendors, and they've told us that parts for that one are very hard to come by, and it is time to replace it. So we went out and looked at the two local vendors that service the majority of fire stations in Vermont, and we obtained quotes from them. And in our opinion, the one that we would like to purchase, it is not only the cheapest of the two quotes, but it offers the best capacity for being able to fill 4 bottles at a time, and that's through the MES company.
And this is an immediate need, you said, because you're currently doing these services at other fire departments too.
That is correct.
Fill
Thankfully,
slots.
knock on wood, we've not had any protracted incidents where we've had to use a lot of air bottles. But the day-to-day stuff, yes, we go to neighboring stations to fill them.
Does anybody have any questions, Max?
Yeah, Chief, can this be shared with the village fire department and their needs for filling the SCBA units?
It's not portable. Any fire department can use them, but once they're installed in a building, then they're stay put. The village will also be looking for their own. Again, we have roughly 70 some odd areas that go to them. Every fire station is the same, so.
Is there any advantage to having them be both the same, brand equipment in both of the?
The short answer is no, but with air bottles that you breathe, the only difference between an SCBA and a scuba is the word underwater, which makes it scuba versus SCBA. But all of those air bottles have a universal international fitting. So if I go scuba diving in warm water in the Caribbean, I can fill it down there as well as, and the same thing with an air bottle. No matter what model pack or what brand you have, they all have the same connection.
So we have a recommendation to make a motion to authorize fire department to move forward on this. Would anyone like to make the motion?
Sure. I'll move that select board authorize the fire department to accept the proposal from MES for the purchase of a Scott brand SCBA refilling station at the cost of $54,519.
Thank you, Max. There's a second. Annie? All those of any further discussion?
And the money you said has already been put into the capital. Now it's just a matter of drawing it out to pay for this.
That is correct.
Great. Good planning.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, you're all set, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do.
Chief, great video. I sent something out to all of you.
Okay, so the next two items, F and G, are executive session items, which we've already agreed to move to the end of the meeting. And at the beginning of the meeting, we had a request to move one item from the consent agenda onto the regular business items agenda. So we're going to have item 5H, which is the minutes for November 26th. Andy, you had some corrections you wanted to make to that?
Yeah, there's just the one, I had recused myself from the tax discussion, but I'd like to add a line at or around line 172 to say Mr. Watts returned to the meeting. So that it's clear when I was not in the room and when I came back. Please. 172 or around there. As it would be helpful if it was a separate paragraph, separate line, just so it's clear. Thank you. That's the only change.
I actually have a change for those minutes as well. Lines 61 to 85, there's a discussion of the Channel 17 presentation, and the name of the executive director of Channel 17 is, her last name is Davidian, just Davidian. The Glenn part is actually her first name. So if you could just refer to her as Ms. Davidian. Her name is Lauren Glenn. That's her full first name, and her last name is Davidian. So that's all. It's just a grammar or proper name question. And I see an audience member has an edit to the minutes. What would you like to suggest?
I would suggest correcting lines 207 to 208, please. I watched this from afar, but I believe that Mr. Signorello asked for 3 representatives from the town outside the village and 3 from inside the village.
Mr. Signorello, since you're in the audience, is that a correct change?
Correct.
All right. Kathy, would you mind making that edit as well?
Thank you.
Any further corrections to the minutes of November 26th? All right. With a motion to approve as amended?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Do this different every time.
Oh, I'm sorry, Andy. How
No,
did
it's
you
just-
expect it to be done?
It's just, we usually do the motion first, and then we make the correction. It doesn't matter, I guess. We do it different every time, I think. I move approval of the joint meeting minutes of November 26, 2019 with, as amended.
Is there a second? All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, please say aye. Aye. Okay. Now, the rest of the consent agenda remains within the agenda itself, so would anyone like to move to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda with select board comments.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And comments, discussion?
So one brief comment. I got an updated letter from the Conservation and Trails Committee today. All 5 current members have signed that letter. Just to let you know.
Okay. Anyone else, Max?
Yeah, and on that topic, the member who hasn't been able to be contacted, are we aware if they're alive and well at least?
We have not heard anything.
Have not heard
There was
anything.
another member who we did learn had some health issues. But this member we've heard nothing.
Oh, it's a little concerning.
Too bad. Yeah. Well, what kind of notification will they receive if we approve this?
We'll send out another letter, an email, and
So a letter and an email? Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments on the consent agenda? All those in favor of approving, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So reading file. First, select board comments. Any thoughts or questions?
It was included in there, the resignation of Dan Stein. He's a neighbor of mine, lives just across the street and about 2 houses down. Very friendly, really great person, but it is health issues that have forced him to step down. His family has been coming up to help clear out his homes on the weekends, and they were asked me to just relay both to the town that he needed to step down, which I think happened separately, but also just to let people know that he is, he didn't just disappear, but he is in the hospital for hip surgery, and once he recovers from there, he's going to be moving permanently to Shelburne in a facility there as well. So he will be no longer a resident of Essex, which is unfortunate because, as I said, he was always a very friendly. He's part of the obviously these committees, so he was active in the community, and he'll certainly be missed.
Oh, we appreciate his service very much. We want to pass that back to his family from us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
While we're on that topic, could I just add something?
Of course.
I want to speak highly of Dan as well. He was on the Conservation and Trails Committee since I had been a staff member supporting that committee, and he was just always passionate about it. Indian Brook in particular was his thing, that was his passion. He was always looking out for it. I used to see him up there on the trails all the time, so he was a good contributing member of the committee, and he will be missed.
Thank you. Any other comments on the reading file? Andy?
So our next meeting is the budget meeting all day, right? Just to make sure I'm reading it correctly.
And that's the
Okay.
6th,
And-
right?
January
January
6th.
6th.
And it's, where is it gonna be? It's here? You gonna feed us breakfast, or is that the
I
plan?
believe I said I would bring some food, but I expect backup.
Our plan is to have a very light, maybe bagel, or muffin, fruit type of thing, and then lunch, and there will be a cookie break. A fed board is a happy board.
Great.
Well, sorry to keep interrupting. While we're on the topic of budget, I got a phone call today from Paul Boney at Green Mountain Transit. He wanted to give us the heads up. Speaking of the budget, we had budgeted 3% for Green Mountain Transit's increase. It was optimistic on staff's part, but we were being optimistic. It was false optimism. Paul said the Green Mountain Transit Board is meeting, I think, tomorrow night, and they're looking at more of a 4 to 5% increase. So you will know more information soon, but just wanted to give you the heads up as you're looking at the budget and getting ready for January 6th.
Thank you. The last 2 years, you've given us a big folder in our Google Drive with all the documents. Will you be doing that again, or do we need to just refer to what's in the reading file here?
I will check with Sarah to see if she has any.
It was super helpful to have a separate, have the whole, just like last time, would be really great. Thank you. Okay. Andy.
Just, is there gonna be a time schedule so that we keep ourselves moving forward and?
In the
That's it.
packet, there was a very detailed time schedule on the first page or two. So I'm assuming we're gonna stick to that.
As close as we can, anyway, I'm sure.
We'll do our best. All right, any other comments on the reading file? Annie?
Can someone just remind me of our arrival time that day?
8 a.m.
Start time is 8 a.m.
Start time is 8 a.m. Breakfast?
So 7:58. Got it.
Any other comments on the reading file? Okay, so let's go back up to items 5F and G. We have 2 executive sessions to declare and move into. And Andy, would you like to make a motion?
I move that the select board make the specific finding that premature general public knowledge of a town's position concerning ongoing contract negotiations, labor relations, agreements with employees, and upcoming mediation would place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
Second that?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And we have a second motion.
I move that the select board enter into executive session to discuss contracts, labor relations, agreements, with employees and mediation pursuant to 1 VSA Section 313A1A, 1 VSA Section 313A1B, and 1 VSA Section 313A1C to include the unified manager, HR director, police chief, police captain, and the town attorney. Do we need, no.
Yes.
Is Bill not here?
No,
Susan
Sue
Gilfillan's here?
Gilfillan, the village
Oh,
attorney.
Sue, of course.
Sue-
Hi, Sue. Okay. We have a
second
second?
that. Yep.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And should we go ahead and make the motions for the second executive session as well? Go ahead.
I move that the select board make the specific finding that general public knowledge of pending and probable civil litigation to which the public body is or may be a party would place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
Second, please.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Final motion?
I move that the select board enter into executive session to discuss pending or probable civil litigation to which the public body is or may be a party pursuant to 1 VSA Section 313A1E to include the unified manager and deputy manager.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we will take a moment's break to walk upstairs and go into executive session. We'll record our